Hello everyone. Let's see the new lesson which we are going to learn is a mental model. Let's see what else all we are going to learn in this lesson. First, we'll understand what is mental model. We'll see some examples of mental model. Then we'll go through why mental models are so important. Then we'll see how mental models can be applied to UX design. Then we'll see the conclusion. Let's take a look on each topics. Let's understand what mental model was and how it has been came in the picture. The first person to talk about mental model was KJW Craig in his 1943 book, The Nature of Explanation. Shortly thereafter, Craig died in a bicycle accident, and the concept was dominant for many years until the 1980s when the term reappeared. In the 80s, there were two books published with the title Mental Models. If you see on screen, it says that the mental model of the user is what expectations the user forms around how a product or experience should behave. This mental model is usually formed through use of similar products or usage patterns or by engaging in similar experience that helps the user from an idea of how things are most likely to work. Then, a mental model is the prescription or representation that a person has in his middle of the product he is interacting with. Any user's mental model is a function of many factors and events. That is, the first time, if you have used an iPad before, your mental model of reading a book on an iPad will be different than the book reading. So, someone who has never used a iPad, then he could be facing a difficulty to use the iPad reading or doesn't even know what iPad are. If you are using a Kindle for the past year, then your mental model will be different from someone who has never read a book electronically. And once you get the iPad and read a couple of books on it, whichever mental model you had in your head before will start to change and adjust to reflect your experience. Imagine that you are never seen an iPad, but I have just handed one to you and told you that you can read book on it. Before you turn on the iPad by yourself, you have a you have a model in your head of what reading a book on the iPad will be like. You have assumption about what the book will look like on the screen, what things you will be able to do and how you will do them. Things like turning a page or using a bookmark. You have a mental model of reading a book on the iPad even if you have never done it before. Let's take a look on next topic, which is why mental models are so important. Mental models help you understand the life. For example, supply and demand is a mental model. that helps you understand how the economic works. Game theory is a mental model that helps you understand how relationships are trust work. Entropy is a mental model that helps you understand how disorder or decay work. Mental mental models are also guide your prescription and behavior. They are the thinking tools that you use to understand life, make decisions, and solve problems. Learning a new mental model gives you a new way to see the world, like Richard Feynman learning a new math technique. Next, mental models are imperfect but useful. There is no single mental model for physics or engineering, for example, that provides a flawless explanation of the entire universe. But the best mental models from those disciplines have allowed us to build bridges and roads, buildings, and many things, develop new technologies, and even travel to outer space also. As historian Yuval Noah Harari puts it, scientists generally agree that no theory is 100% correct. Thus, the real test of knowledge is not truth, but utility. The best mental models are the ideas with the most utility. They are broadly useful in daily life. Understanding this concept will help you make wiser choices and take better actions. This is why developing a broad base of mental models is critical for anyone interested in thinking clearly, rationally, and effectively. Next, a mental models can allow developers to understand and analyze any problem in a interactive design. Different to the mental developer's mental model, since all people perceive the world in any individual way, all users generally generates individual mental models. The challenge here is to ensure that developers build a product with the user's mental model in mind. The reason that people make mistakes when interacting with a product is often because their mental model is a mental models trends to different between different countries and different cultures. So, to take the bicycle example, in the UK, a front brake has to be on the right hand bar, both for reasons of expectations and legality. However, this is switched around for the US and Europe countries. This is also true of the web users. Now, if you see on a screen, it's a Facebook screenshot or it's a Facebook portal of a Middle East version, which is a sign up page. Which you see, it it works like if you see the arrow, it shows that from right to right. So now if you see on a next version, which is a, U, a UK version. Now these both are two different territories. People in the middle is right from right to left, whereas people in the west right from left to right. Developers need to understand this is order to build a usable website. Next, let's see how mental models can be applied to the UX design. There are three ways. One, ways to listen users and designers mental model gap. Let's see what it says. One of the major reason why product fail is because there is a wide gap between the mental model of the designers, often termed as a conceptual model, and that of the end user. It's one of the great dilemmas of usability. To overcome this, it's essential that designers understand the user's model to design something that works in the real world. Some of the ways that can help us lessen the gap are: 1. Jacob's Law. 1. First is Jacob's Law. It offers one of the solutions overcome this. It says user spends most of their time on other website. This means that users prefer your site to work the same way as all the other sites they already know while using it. Design for patterns for which users are astonished. By designing for patterns that users are astonished to, you prevent their changes of getting lost and eventually give up on your website or application. Next, natural users interface. The goal here is to reduce abstraction that come with the GUIs. Apple mostly uses natural user interface in its product, using gestures and manipulations like how we could in real life. As early beginners, we learn how our inputs or actions are responded to and expect the same while using a product. For example, let us take while reading a book, we turn the page using just a finger. Imagine early GUIs used to have scroll bar to do the same task, where now the interaction used to happen between the users and the scroll bars and not the user and contents. So Apple's iPad provided a very natural way of doing the same by implementing touch that enables turning the page with just a finger click or just finger on a tab, just like how we could accept to do in the real life. It's natural and intuitive. Next, which is card sorting exercise. Card sorting exercise is a very important technique to determine how our users wants to categorize the information that will appear on every website or applications. It's cheaper but quick and provides more insights into your users group than most of the It's cheaper, quick, and provides more insights into your user groups than most of the conventional user research methods. Can be done in two ways, which are open card sorting and the closed card sorting. In open card sorting, participants are given a deck of cards and asked to group them in a way that makes sense to them and then name each group they created. They are they are then asked to explain why they choose to group they choose. This is a quite beneficial when designers don't have any regal structure in hand and are trying to know how to categorize the information. Then the second one is which is a closed card sorting. In this method, groups are already made and participants are just asked to arrange the cards under the pre-established groups. It good to go for closed card sorting exercise when you are dealing with a predefined information architecture. So these are the three Linson methods which can be used. Next, the second one, Gestalt principle of textual organization. In this, let's begin our journey by getting to grips with the Gestalt principle of textual organization that allows us to see the way that people structures the environmental and prescribes it. Principle of proximity. If you look at the image below, you can see how the first group of dots we prescribe them to be in the same entity, but in the second set of dots we perceive them to be two separate entities because of the small gap. Let's look how this comes into the web form. If you see on a screen in the web form, you can see the principle of a proximity at work in a negative way. Each cell looks like a separate entity when in fact they all are related. On this web page, you can see how the red blocks make the three separate entities clearly. The three text entity fields from one entity, the headline and introductory text is another entity, and the third is the sign-in CTA. This web page has been taken from the web references from the internet to show you how the references. This has been used for the just for references to know you. Our own brain have created these rules, and if you are a designer, it's important to know how this placement affects. Next, a principle of similarity. Shapes and colors that are similar to one another and perceived as a separate entity. If you see in a image, so in the previous web form, all the examples of these styles of text are the same entity and are different form. The same thing occurs when you see the green CTLs. If you see on a screen, the image has been highlighted with the blue highlights. The buttons, two buttons which are into the green, one is sign up on the top and one is below sign up for GitHub, and one arrow which shows a blue text which is in a hyperlink text. So this is how an example we understand that anything that is formed of a blue text in a hyperlink that will open in new browser tab. Therefore, All examples of these styles of text are the same entities and are different from other entities on the page. The same thing occurs when you see the green buttons. Let's see next. Principle of common region. If you separate the elements so they form a group we can perceive each group as being a separate entity. In image, it shows that there are two groups, right? With a separate entity. For example, take see the Pinterest as an example where all through I am given pins, image and text are clearly different elements. Thanks to the divine line, we know that they belong to the same entity. Next, principle of continuity. This is one of the most important and common principles. In the image below, you can see this at work all through. The intention of the lines is to follow the color structure. Our brain prioritizes following the form of the lines. Structures is most visual significant than colors. If you see, there are two shapes of a line. One is straight and one is curved, which is intercrossing to each other. But when we see the color, the half of the line below is in a red and the half of the curves, which is the right side, is in red. But when we see as a shape, entire shape, we see the curve one shape and the straight line as a one shape. For an example, in Netflix, you can see this has been applied with the slider function that lets you cycle sideways through the listing. Next, principle of closure, where elements have a specific distance between them. They generate a shape that our brain translates into a solid form. Check out the zebra below, which says the principle of closure. And another example, which is an IBM or the Adidas logo. Again, this images has been taken for your references from the internet. Next, principle of focal point. When just one of the elements has a different shape of or color, our brain prioritizes this one over the another element. For example, principle of focal point. If you see the image, it has a dot and the rectangle with a different shape. To see for the references, for an example, we had taken a screenshot of Tulelo website. This can be used to make specific click to actions you want to drive people towards, that is login or sign up button. And next, Hofstede's culture. Next, let's take a look on Hofstede's cultural dimension. Based on analysis of an IBM survey of employees, value in the early 70s, Hofstede discovered that there were significant differences among cultures in different countries, and He defined culture as a set of shared characteristics such as thoughts, values, and behaviors. For example, if you see on a screen, what do you identify? So this is an example of this at work. Take a look at the home page below or on a screen and try to answer the following question. Where is this website from? And what is the purpose of the website? So if we see, we did this, we asked this question of this website in our webinars attendees, and all through most guessed the correct country, Japan. Many way off with the purpose. Incorrect answers include gardening, a version of Amazon, kid video game, document storage, environmental, and business cat. So many of these are example of common mental models. People see the green and assume something garden or environment because of their own experience within our culture. Now with another example, again this screenshot is of a Barclays Bank. However, this homepage is in fact a banking website. Our ideas of what a banking website looks like in the UK is very different to how a banking site looks in Japan. Here's a typical UK banking site. If you asked a Japanese web developer to build a banking website for a UK audience, their culture prescription could be very different to what the UK audience expert. Hofstede's cultural dimensions are split into 6 categories, and here is where we measure the difference between cultures and countries. One, the first is power distance. This is the extent to which the people of a particular cultures are willing to accept unequal power distributions. Countries with high power distance tends to experience centralized decision making. Management and supervisors are highly expected and have the last say in decision. Like countries with a low power distance, everyone accepts to share in decision making. Management hierarchies are quieter and more open to questioning. In high power distance cultures, an employee will never question a manager. In low power distance cultures, employees and are encouraged to have an open dialogue with management. For design purpose, what could work well in high power distance countries could be introducing visuals, expressions and images with authoritative body language that are informative and guiding, whereas low power distance culture may prefer activities of daily life, popular image, symbols and colors. So this was about the power distance in different countries with low power distance and a high power distance. Next, uncertainty avoidance. This is the extent to which a society fears and next, uncertainty avoidance. This is the extent to which a society fears and avoids uncertainty and uncertain outcomes. A countries like Low uncertainty avoidance, willingness to take risk. But a countries with a high certainty avoidance tends to have strictly defined rules of behaviors and formalities. In high certainty countries, things that are different or unexplained can be viewed as dangerous, but in low certainty countries, more experiments and or innovative behaviors happens. Countries with high certainty avoidance fears change and don't like ambiguity. They also probably have more laws and regulations. Countries with a low uncertainty avoidance are more willing to take risks and are more flexible in the way they work. If we take design for a high UA culture may include similar simply clear design, limited choice, attempts to reveal or forecast the result or implications of action before user acts. Navigation schemes intend to prevent user from becoming lost. Help systems that focus on reducing user errors. Redundant cues, color, typography, sound, etc. to reduce ambiguity. Low UA cultures could emphasize the reviews, so maximum content and choice, acceptance even encouragement of wandering and risk with a sentina or overprotection. Less control of navigation, for example, link might open a new window, leading away from the original location. Mental models and help system might focus on understanding underlying concept rather than narrow task. Next, individualism versus collectivism. The extent to which people in the society define themselves as part of larger group. Countries with high intelligence tend to experience social ties that are losers. Individuals accepted to look after themselves. Countries with high collectivism, individuals are strongly incorporated into groups of families, play, school. Government policies often favor the group over individual rights. When it comes to design, content based on materialism and consumerism will work well in individualistic countries, whereas content that represents community and harmony will work in highly collectivity countries. For example, take a dating website of, of any country full of many different faces looking out towards the visitors. The same dating website if we take in another country which features a young couple looking at one another. So next is masculinity versus femininity. The extent to which a society favors certain gender traits. Countries that value high masculinity favors assertiveness, emphasis on competition. Countries that value high femininity focus on quality of life, importance placed on the well-being of relationships. A website in a country that values high masculinity may favor competitions, may talk about how you can grow and better yourself. A website from a culture with high femininity may concentrate on well-being, relationship, and the value of life. Next, which is long versus short-term time orientation. The extent to which society is focused on the future as opposed to the past and present. Countries that favors long-term time orientation, which promotes virtue and persistence, and focus towards future rewards. Countries like countries that favors short-term time orientation, they emphasizes the past and present and fosters a respect for traditions. And the last is intelligence. So these are the six categories of a Hosford's culture dimensions which we have gone through. So I hope these six you may remember when you use a mental model. So at last, let's conclude of the mental model. A mental model represents a person's through process for how something works, that is, a person's understanding of the surrounding world. Since all people perceive the world in any individual way, all users generate individual mental models. The challenge here is to ensure that developers build a product with the user's mental model in mind. Mental model tends to different between different countries and cultures. So, mental models are based on incomplete facts, past experience, and even intuitive prescriptions. They have shape, action, and behavior, influence what people pay attention to in complicated situations, and define how people approach and solve problems. A mental model is what the user believes about the system at hand. It is based on belief, not facts. That is, it's a model of what users know or think they know about a system, such as your website. Hopeful user thinking is closely related to reality because they base their predictions about the system on their mental models and thus plan their future action based on how the model predict the approach goes. So till now we had learned about the in and out of mental model. So I hope everyone enjoyed the lesson on of a mental model.